So when you think about the perfect alibi, your mind probably goes to proving you were miles away from the crime scene.
Right. The classic "I was at the movies" defense.
Exactly. But what if the perfect alibi wasn't actually designed to prove your innocence? What if it was designed to prove you were somewhere else entirely, so you could basically become a ghost and launch a massive private investigation right under your enemy's nose?
And that is the razor-sharp premise we are just dissecting today. We've done a really deep dive into our source material. These are excerpts from the novel Anatomy of an Alibi, and honestly, the plot is so complex it creates this immediate information overload. We're not just charting one conspiracy here.
Yeah, right.
We're charting two simultaneous colliding conspiracies.
Okay, so let's try to unpack this incredibly intricate web. Our mission today is to navigate this identity swap. It's so meticulously planned that it required layers of technology and, frankly, just pure deception.
A lot of deception.
We have to identify the key players who get caught in the crossfire, analyze these shocking dual motives. One is purely financial, the other is for decade-old justice. And we have to track the separate, secret plans that are set in motion by the two women at the very center of this storm.
Right.
All of it culminating in a very, very high-stakes murder.
And the core scenario, it revolves around two women, Camille Bayliss, who is this wealthy, completely controlled wife, and Aubrey Price, who is this fiercely motivated bartender. Their lives become just totally intertwined.
They collide.
They collide, yeah, because of a devastating secret held by Camille's husband, Ben Bayliss, who's a powerful defense attorney. Their exchange of identities, it's all centered around a weekend trip to a place called St. Francisville. And it wasn't just a physical swap, it was a digital construction. It was designed to create an undeniable tracked alibi for Camille while she secretly returned home to commit espionage.
And what's just so fascinating to me here is how quickly the stakes escalate. I mean, it goes from what looks like a kind of boring marital dispute to a full-blown criminal conspiracy in like a heartbeat. We really need to pull apart not just the how, the actual mechanics of the swap, but the why. Why was this incredibly dangerous deception necessary for both of these women?
Precisely. Let's start with the first part, the players and the perfect swap, because to really get the audacity of the plan, you first have to understand the suffocating prison that Camille Bayliss found herself in.
The sources, they really paint this picture of extreme privilege that functions almost identically to extreme confinement. Camille's life is, yes, highly privileged, but it is completely managed. It's designed and controlled.
Totally.
It was built by her powerful father, Randall Everett, and then it was sort of maintained by her husband, Ben. She's the trophy wife.
Yeah.
She's expected to go to the right parties, maintain the right look, and ultimately, she's supposed to be this spotless accessory for Ben's high-powered legal career.
And the mechanism that ensures she complies, it's not just, social pressure.
Yeah.
It is a fiercely restrictive prenuptial agreement. Her father, Randall Everett, insisted on this thing. And it basically states that if Camille leaves Ben without a good enough reason, and that means hard proof of Ben's bad behavior, so specifically infidelity or criminal wrongdoing, she walks away with almost nothing.
She's financially locked down. Utterly, which makes an affair her best and really her easiest escape rail.
Yeah, that's what she's hoping for. And that pressure cooker just finally explodes over the most personal issue you can imagine. Children. Ben, completely out of the blue, decides and insists that they start a family.
Wow.
Camille dreads this. She sees it as the final layer of cement in her gilded cage, and that dread, that's the catalyst. That's what drives her to start searching through Ben's highly secured home office, looking for any piece of evidence that proves his bad behavior and triggers her financial escape clause.
And that search for evidence of some kind of affair leads her directly into the path of Aubrey Price at a place called Doug's Cavern. Camille walks in there with a very clear objective.
Confirm the affair, get the leverage, file for divorce. Simple.
But the confrontation is just intensely awkward, and it immediately proves Camille's entire assumption is wrong. Aubrey, the bartender, she is genuinely outraged. She's surprised by the accusation of having an affair with some high-powered attorney.
Right. This isn't some, jealous wife showdown. It's a tense, really confusing exchange for both of them.
Yet, Camille had what she thought was proof of Ben's intense interest in Aubrey. She had found a bar napkin in his office with Aubrey's full name, her phone number, and even her home address.
Which is creepy on its own.
Super creepy. And maybe even more damning, she had confirmed Ben's Range Rover car tracking data showed multiple stops right near Doug's Tavern. So if he wasn't sleeping with her, why would a man like Ben, who controls his life down to the absolute minute, be obsessively tracking and collecting personal details on a relatively unknown bartender.
And that is the critical shift in the whole story. Aubrey realizes this isn't about a romance, it's not about an affair, it is about something far, far darker.
And in that moment of just intense suspicion, Aubrey drops the name that just shatters Camille's entire world: Paul Granger.
And Granger is the man who was convicted 10 years ago for the hit-and-run death of Aubrey's parents.
The reaction from Camille, the sources say, is immediate and it's visceral. She flinches. They describe a visible panic, a sudden inability for her to maintain her composure.
And that single physical reaction, that's what confirms it for Aubrey. It confirms that Ben's secret is explosive, it's high stakes, and it is directly tied to the accident that ruined her life 10 years ago. It's way beyond infidelity.
It's a decade-old cover-up.
A huge one.
It's just jarring how efficiently Camille then leverages Aubrey's pain for her own financial gain. The prenup dictates her entire moral compass in this moment. She realizes that whatever Ben is hiding about the Granger case, it could destroy his career, and, crucially for her, it could satisfy the criminal wrongdoing clause in her agreement.
And at the same time, Aubrey realizes that Ben must be actively trying to destroy some piece of evidence that could finally free Paul Granger and bring the truth about her parents' deaths to light. They're total opposites, but their immediate goals just align perfectly.
So the bargain is struck. Camille gets a flawless alibi, and the time she needs to go home and snoop around undetected, searching for that smoking gun.
And Aubrey gets eyes on Ben's activities, she gets access to his resources, and most importantly, the chance to find the truth before Ben can eliminate it forever. It's this cooperative deception where, neither woman really trusts the other one fully.
Not at all.
And the technical mechanics of this identity swap, which is scheduled for Saturday, October 10th, it required just Swiss watch precision, and that's because they were fighting Ben's own controlling nature. Ben is a lawyer who weaponizes tracking technology.
Oh yeah, he monitors Camille constantly. The sources really highlight the importance of the Range Rover, which is a traceable, very high visibility vehicle, and the fact that Aubrey had to carry Camille's locked phone. Why the locked phone?
Well, because Ben was using the vehicle's own specific tracking app, probably a feature like Journeys or, one of the manufacturer's apps, to monitor the physical location and the movement patterns associated with Camille's main device.
Oh, if that phone stops moving, or, God forbid, leaves the expected vacation route in St. Francisville, the whole alibi just instantly collapses.
Instantly. The digital trail had to be absolutely flawless.
Yeah.
So Aubrey had the Range Rover, she had Camille's distinctive rings, the clothes, the wig.
Which is a necessity not just for security cameras, right, but for passing any kind of basic cursory scrutiny.
Totally. And she also had to use Camille's platinum credit card over and over again, generating those bank alerts that Ben would expect to see. Every transaction, every ping from the phone's GPS, every security camera image had to paint this perfect picture of Camille Baylis just enjoying a relaxing, expensive weekend far, far away.
But the real star of the operation, in my opinion, is Camille. She transforms herself into a ghost. While Aubrey is meticulously building this digital trail miles away, Camille drives back to Baton Rouge, the one place Ben expects her not to be.
She's driving a completely untraceable vehicle, this old Honda Accord she bought specifically for this purpose, and she strips herself of all modern tech. No phone, no smartwatch, no GPS navigation. Nothing. She is actively erasing her digital footprint. She's moving entirely undetected because Ben's monitoring systems can only catch what's connected to the grid. The entire success of her spy operation hinges on Camille maintaining absolute, total silence in the digital world.
It's a brilliant setup. But of course, as soon as the swap is complete, the dual nature of their motives becomes so apparent. Aubrey is not just following Camille's instructions.
Oh.
And that takes us into the next phase. Aubrey goes off script. Justice by proxy.
And this is really where the plot just explodes. Aubrey knows Camille's one and only focus is securing her financial freedom through that prenup.
That's all she cares about.
That's it. She also knows that if Ben's secret happens to implicate Camille's powerful father, Randall Everett, Camille is going to prioritize protecting the family name over Aubrey's quest for justice. The trust between them is completely conditional.
Her internal calculation is just stark. She cannot rely on Camille to share damaging evidence if she finds it.
Yes.
So she activates her own secondary secret plan. It involves her highly specialized housemates. This is the team.
We really need to acknowledge how essential this support system is for her. Aubrey's bartender. She can't execute advanced surveillance or infiltration on her own. She needs Deacon, Shane, and Eddie.
So Deacon is the muscle,
Mm.
and he's the connections. The sources identify him as having direct ties to organized crime, specifically a bookie named Chris Ricci.
And why is a bookie important? Because bookies, they often have untraceable contacts, they have access to these closed networks and resources that just operate completely outside of official channels. Deacon is fiercely loyal to Aubrey. He's her enforcer, her protector, and his connections are absolutely vital for the independent surveillance they are about to launch.
And then you have Shane and Eddie. They're the technical experts, former car thieves who now run a legitimate mechanic shop.
Right. They provide the practical skills you need for physical and technical intelligence. So, overriding security systems, planting physical trackers, and getting vehicle access. They know cars inside and out.
So the first deviation from Camille's script is immediately noticed by Ben, which just goes to show you his constant surveillance. Instead of heading straight to the St. Francisville Festival as planned, Aubrey makes an immediate detour to a feed store.
And Ben sees the location change on the tracked phone and immediately texts Camille about it, just showing how paranoid he is. What are you doing at a feed store?
And the feed store is their espionage hub. It's disguised as this totally mundane stop.
Right. The objective there is pure necessity. Eddie gets under the Range Rover and installs a physical GPS tracker. They also copy the car key and, this is crucial, the garage door signal from the vehicle's onboard system.
And they realize Ben drives a similar Range Rover, and the assumption is that the accounts might be linked, which could give them multiple avenues for surveillance later on. This physical tracker, it's their insurance policy.
Totally. If Camille finds the video evidence but decides to keep it locked down for her own purposes, to use as leverage for her divorce, but not to free, Paul Granger Aubrey's team still needs independent access to Ben's house and his vehicle's movements to find the evidence themselves.
So once that technical part of the espionage is complete, Aubrey fully commits to her secret mission. She hands over the Range Rover, the tracked phone, and the whole responsibility of maintaining that flawless digital alibi to Serenity, who is another one of her housemates.
And Serenity's role is so critical, and it sounds surprisingly tedious. She just has to wander around the festival, keep the phone battery charged, and keep the car in motion, generating all these pings and locations that make it look like Camille is just innocently enjoying her weekend.
She is the manager of the digital performance.
Exactly. While Aubrey takes the most dangerous detour of all, a trip to Angola, the Louisiana State Penitentiary, to confront Paul Granger directly.
She risked everything on this visit. Not just Ben's detection, but potential for major institutional trouble. Her goal was to get specific confirmation about the conspiracy from the man himself.
And the visit yields the single most important piece of evidence so far. Paul Granger, he claims he was set up, and he confirms the existence of new evidence, a surveillance video from a gas station. And it was located right near the intersection of the fatal accident 10 years ago.
This detail is just pivotal. It proves the evidence is a tangible thing, a physical or digital item, not just some vague rumor. And Paul reveals this shocking timeline. The video has existed since the morning after the crash.
Which proves the cover-up began almost immediately. And Paul also explains that his source, this unknown person who was connected with the case, visited him, admitted fault, and promised to fix the injustice. Paul believes this source is still alive and will eventually help him appeal his conviction.
But Aubrey, because she's armed with Deacon's intelligence, she knows this source, a man named Kevin Foster, is dead.
So this confirms the ultimate truth for her. The physical evidence exists, and Ben is frantically trying to acquire it and destroy it before it can prove Paul Granger innocent, get him out of the largest maximum security prison in the U.S., and, worst of all for Ben, implicate him in the entire decade-old cover-up. Aubrey now has her target, and she has her timeline.
So now let's pivot back to Camille, who's running her own parallel mission. While Aubrey is racing toward justice, Camille is literally trapped in the house she owns, just desperate for financial freedom. And that brings us to Section 3, Camille's spy operation and Ben's paranoia.
Camille's choice of hiding spot is, well, it's ingenious, but it's also terrifying. She's in the foam-insulated attic of her own house.
It's insulated enough that she won't immediately suffer from heat exhaustion, but she is still completely isolated. She's using a bucket for sanitation, and she's equipped with only a few small cameras that are synced to her iPad for surveillance.
The risk is just astronomical. If Ben finds her, her alibi is ruined, her marriage is over on his terms, and she has potentially committed a serious crime.
And the tension immediately spikes when Ben arrives home early, around 1 p.m. on Saturday. Camille was expecting to have the whole day, and suddenly the target is right below her.
She watches his immediate and really shocking transformation. The polished lawyer Ben persona, the coat, the tie, the perfectly combed hair, it just vanishes. He rolls up his sleeves, lets his hair relax, and becomes Relax Ben. But it's a relaxation that's born of this intense, suppressed anxiety.
And that is the moment the mask truly falls. He heads straight for his home office, and he is clearly on a high-stakes mission. He retrieves a manila envelope, and it contains papers, photographs, and the critical item, a media storage drive.
And Camille can see his extreme physical tension from her hiding spot. The nervous pacing, the way his joints are popping, the constant throat clearing, the muttering to himself.
His paranoia is just palpable. When he watches the contents of the drive, his tension just boils over. The sources recount him sweeping documents right off his desk in a fit of pure, unadulterated rage, just screaming, "What the fuck?"
This isn't the controlled lawyer we've heard about. This is a panic-stricken conspirator who is realizing his carefully built life is collapsing around him.
And this high-tension moment is broken by this really unexpected intersection of the two plans. Ben is interrupted by an unscheduled visit from Shane and Eddie Aubrey's housemates, who are there to deliver a newly restored 1970 Mustang.
And this Mustang purchase in itself is deeply suspicious. Ben is defined by his new money, his preference for brand new, straight-off-the-lot luxury cars.
Right.
Buying a vintage muscle car just completely contradicts his entire brand. It's a very unusual action for a man who is under extreme pressure, which Camille notes immediately from the attic.
And Ben lies instantly about the connection. He claims his partner, Hank, gave him Shane and Eddie's names. And the mechanics, they're brilliant in their role as moles. They just feign ignorance of Hank maintaining their cover. But the car delivery is just that, it's a cover. The real mission is reconnaissance.
Yeah, Shane uses the delivery as a distraction. He slips away briefly to the garage under the pretense of checking the car's fluids. His real objective is to confirm the layout and make sure they can successfully return later to steal the necessary key. Camille, who has no idea Shane and Eddie are working for Aubrey, is just completely perplexed by Ben's deep and sudden involvement with these two mechanics.
The moment of absolute clarity for Camille comes when Ben plugs in that media drive. And suddenly, Aubrey's face fills the screen. It's a surveillance video of Aubrey confronting a Detective Walden. Ben watches her persistence and just becomes enraged, realizing his problem, the threat to the Granger cover-up, has a face, and it is not going to go away.
This is the moment Ben realizes he has to take physical action. He calls his private investigator. But unbeknownst to Ben, this PI, a guy named Vic, is actually a contact of Deacon's.
No way.
Yes, making Ben's entire operational plan an open book to Aubrey's team.
So that phone call is the absolute jackpot for Camille. Ben confirms the entire sequence of events and reveals his timeline. He's going to Foster's place in Corbeau around 6 p.m. He specifies the objective, access to a Defense Force 24 gun safe.
And this is not a small lockbox. A Defense Force 24 is a serious high-security safe. It's designed for valuable items, which just confirms the evidence is critical and is well protected.
And he reveals his solution. He ordered a replacement key via FedEx because he couldn't find the original. He confirms he's going to get the evidence himself because, in his words, he has looked everywhere else.
It's an act of extreme desperation. A high-powered attorney planning a B&E to retrieve and destroy crucial video evidence that could expose a decade of corruption.
But just as Ben finalizes his plan to leave for Corbeau, which is a town central to the power of the Everett family, he has one final confounding visitor. His sister-in-law, Margaret Everett, Silas's wife, arrives.
And Camille is just left utterly confused. Why Margaret? What role does Randall Everett's daughter-in-law play in this highly sensitive criminal evidence recovery? This final meeting just confirms that the crisis isn't just Ben versus Aubrey or Ben versus Camille. The Everett family influence is deeply, deeply embedded in Ben's final hours.
We know Ben was murdered sometime after 1 p.m. on Saturday when he arrived home, and that timeline immediately points us toward the man who found the body and, well, stood to gain the most. Section 4. Hank Landry partner, executor suspect.
Hank arrives at the scene Sunday morning after Camille's frantic, hysterical call. He notes the purplish-gray tint of Ben's skin and the large bloodstain, confirming Ben has been dead for many hours, likely since Saturday afternoon or evening.
And despite the shock and this grisly scene, Hank's lawyer instincts just immediately take over. He takes control of Camille, who's in shock, commanding her to focus. "Don't guess. Look directly at me." He transforms into the cool, calculating lawyer designed to manage a crisis.
His priority immediately shifts to managing the situation to protect the firm's interests and, of course, Camille. He uses his considerable size and his legal status to navigate the initial responding officers and a Detective Sullivan. And the first and most important action he takes is what we're calling the privilege grab.
He insists on collecting Ben's client files from the desk, citing attorney-client privilege, before the police can review them. Now, while this is legally standard practice, the move immediately puts crucial information out of the immediate reach of the investigation. Hank is positioning himself not just as the grieving partner, but as the gatekeeper of all of Ben's secrets.
And the police are quickly aware that Hank has a monumental financial motive. During his formal interview on Monday, Hank reveals that Ben was actively trying to dissolve their partnership, a move that would have resulted in Hank becoming the sole head of the firm and financially benefiting him immensely.
So you have the perfect scenario for a murder suspect. Immediate and significant financial gain, coupled with a completely porous alibi. Hank claims he spent the entire Saturday afternoon and night alone in his garage working on his vintage car, a 1970 Pontiac GTO.
And Hank himself, he acknowledges the weakness of this defense. He basically tells Sullivan, I know what this looks like. He understands that given the financial benefit and the recent antagonistic attempt to dissolve the firm, he would quickly become the prime suspect if the case goes cold.
So his professional training now forces him to realize he has to conduct his own parallel investigation. It's driven by suspicion and pure self-preservation.
And that leads him into the files he successfully sequestered from the police. He's digging not just to clear his own name, but to understand what kind of man his partner truly was.
The first item he finds is the formal dissolution notice, confirming Ben was trying to force him out of the partnership. And this creates an immediate, agonizing internal conflict for Hank. You've relief that he survived this professional and financial betrayal, mixed with guilt over Ben's violent death.
But the deeper dive into the files reveals the shocking, just total moral bankruptcy of Ben Bayless. Hank finds evidence that Ben was running two completely separate sets of files. In the home files related to a case for Pete Sanders, Hank finds clear documentation of Ben engaging in witness intimidation and potential blackmail against Department of Transportation officials, referencing the shadowy figure known only as Chief.
So this is the confirmation. Ben wasn't just a high-powered defense attorney. He was actively using the firm's resources and his legal knowledge for criminal ends. He was a blackmailer, a fixer, and a conspirator, all operating under this guise of respectability.
And then, the connection to the core conspiracy surfaces. Hank finds the PI report on Aubrey Price and the prisoner file on Paul Granger, and Hank reveals that he himself had been interested in taking on Paul Granger's appeal case, but Ben had just vehemently and repeatedly shut the idea down.
Seeing that file now, combined with all the other evidence of Ben's criminal enterprises, it confirms everything. Ben wasn't just disinterested in the Granger case. He was actively suppressing any chance of an appeal.
Hank realizes the full scale of the moral rot at the very heart of their firm, and that his partner was willing to send an innocent man to the largest maximum security prison in the U.S. just to protect himself.
It's a devastating realization.
Yeah.
Hank is forced to grapple with the fact that his entire professional life was built on a foundation of lies and criminality. The respectable defense attorney was, in fact, the chief conspirator.
And that brings us to Section 5, the deep connection. Ben, Granger, and the Everetts. Because Ben's criminal behavior was not isolated. It was tangled up in the region's deepest roots of wealth and corruption.
You cannot talk about this conspiracy without talking about Randall Everett, Camille's father. The sources make it so clear that Randall doesn't just live in the small, affluent town of Corbeau. He rules Corbeau. This is a family power structure built on generations of wealth, a history of bootlegging, and absolute social and political intimidation.
Randall Everett is the ultimate controlling interest in Camille's life, and now, in the immediate aftermath of Ben's death, he asserts that same control over Hank. Randall visits Hank not to grieve, but to confront him.
Right.
He openly discusses Ben's attempt to dissolve the partnership, and he aggressively questions Hank's fitness to serve as Camille's attorney and executor.
It is a thinly veiled but highly effective threat. Randall is demonstrating the reach and the immediate consequences of the Everett family's power. They want control of the narrative, control of the investigation, and most of all, control of Camille.
Meanwhile, Camille, from her attic vantage point, has been connecting her own dots. She recalls Ben's attitude toward her father changing dramatically 10 years prior, moving from an initial healthy professional disdain to what she calls nauseating admiration right after the Granger hit-and-run accident.
She suspects, and correctly, that Ben was intimately involved in the cover-up, the true driver of that fatal accident. That relationship that he built with the Everetts was based on a mutual criminal secret.
So let's just tie the whole hypothesis together with the highest possible stakes. Ben is desperate because the surveillance video evidence that's hidden in Foster's Defense Force 24 safe would achieve three things at the same time.
Okay.
First, it proves Paul Granger is innocent, triggering his freedom. Second, it implicates Ben in the cover-up of the true driver of the hit and run, who is potentially a member of the Everett family or someone connected to them. And that would destroy Ben's career and trigger the criminal clause in Camille's prenup.
And third, and arguably the most terrifying outcome for him, releasing that video would incur the full, unmitigated wrath of Randall Everett. Ben was fighting this losing battle to maintain the status quo, his marriage, his career, and his life, by eliminating the one definitive piece of evidence.
And now the status quo is officially and violently broken.
Both Hank and Camille, working entirely independently and secretly, have realized the same truth. Ben's murder is not by some random disgruntled client, but as a direct result of a decade-old conspiracy with ties to the most powerful family in the region. The investigation has pivoted from solving a simple crime of passion or greed to uncovering organized corruption.
It's an incredible convergence of personal desperation and systemic corruption. You have two women using an alibi for entirely different purposes, Camille for financial freedom, Aubrey for justice, and the man they're both hunting ends up dead.
Let's review the landscape as we conclude this deep dive. Ben Bayless was operating a complex double life. The respected attorney was also a blackmailer and a conspiracy cover-up artist. His death, when you look at it, was almost inevitable, given the number of lives he had destroyed or threatened.
And we saw the incredible bravery required of both Camille and Aubrey. Camille endured physical isolation in that attic for her financial freedom, and Aubrey risked detection by traveling to Angola for confirmation, all while relying on her loyal, technically proficient team to run independent surveillance on the side.
And then there's Hank Landry. The rational, the grounded partner, suddenly thrust into the role of chief suspect because of his weak alibi and clear financial motive, all while he's struggling to comprehend the moral rot of his best friend and business partner.
The immediate crisis, it all centers on the timeline. Ben was killed sometime after 1 p.m. on Saturday, and Aubrey, with Deacon's support and Shane and Eddie's recon, was planning to intercept Ben at Foster's house around 6 p.m. Saturday, the exact time Ben revealed he was heading there during his call with the PI.
So we have so many compelling suspects for this final devastating act. Was it Deacon, acting on behalf of Aubrey's need for justice, stopping Ben from destroying the evidence? Was it Randall Everett, protecting the family's secret and punishing Ben for involving himself and making the family vulnerable? Was it Pete Sanders, retaliating against Ben's intense blackmail schemes, preemptively stopping the destruction of his life?
Or, the possibility that's maybe the most terrifying, was it Camille, who finally had confirmation of Ben's criminal activity, the trigger for her prenup, and took the ultimate step to secure her freedom from her controlling husband and her father?
The source material leaves us with one final confounding image. Camille watching Margaret Everett, Randall Everett's daughter-in-law, enter the house for a final mysterious meeting with Ben. And this happened just moments before Ben planned to drive out to Corbeau to break into that safe.
Given that Margaret is the direct link to the family's proximity and their control, and Ben was about to shatter a decade-old secret that protects the Everetts, the provocative final thought we want to leave you with is this. What role did Margaret, and by extension, the powerful, controlling Everett family, truly play in engineering Ben's final hours?
Did she arrive to help Ben, or was she the final necessary piece to ensure that Ben Bayless and the truth about the Paul Granger case were both permanently silenced?